but by being open and honest about what you're looking to explore and how it directly ties to something that the stakeholder cares about, you're including them in the process while preserving the rigor of your work.
What tactics do you recommend to bring those partners into the process and to bring them along?
I really feel like that partnership is crucial for a research project to be successful. I think that if you're delivering results without that partnership up front, a lot of times those results are not going to land, no matter how strongly based they are in evidence and data, because they haven't been part of that journey and seen the story evolve along with you. And as a researcher, that can be really frustrating, right? I learned all this like exciting new stuff. This is going to completely change how we approach things. And then everyone's like, wait, back up a second. I need to follow your logic, right? The ways I've looked at bringing people in before is I lean really heavily into workshopping. For example, when a product management team develops their roadmap, we should be building research roadmaps in parallel, because by anticipating what's coming next, tying our research studies to business goals that we're driving against, like in a quarter, in a year, and making sure that everything has that through line, we're really proving out our ROI and showing that we're in lockstep with our product partners. And it makes our research better. It means that we're more heavily focused on the things that our business cares about, and we can bring the business need and the user need together to really deliver something that's going to be impactful for both the customer and the business. So whenever those sort of planning sessions happen, whether they're quarterly, whether they're in a more agile process, what have you, I think research has to be in that room. If you've got a good knowledge base already, informing what the product roadmap looks like, and also based on how that's developing, think about the kind of research that we need to do to execute against that product roadmap. This is also to your earlier question about how to be more strategic and proactive. That is also the perfect opportunity to start pitching research opportunities early on and securing buy-in for doing more like a generative or foundational work up front, so it doesn't come as a surprise or it's impeding something that's already been decided or so I think there's a lot of advantage of showing up in the planning stage before decisions have really been made. When it comes to actually kicking off a research project, something else I think is really important is when you're refining a research question and also writing out the hypotheses that you're testing against. Those hypotheses should not just be driven by the context of what you're exploring, but also like the preconceived biases of your stakeholders, right? Like, what assumptions are people making? What are they biased in favor of? Do they have a pet project? Is something like an idea that they really want to see successful for whatever reason? Are there business incentives, right? Or organizational incentives that means they really want something to test well? That's not a bad thing. We all have a role to play in the organization, and everyone's incentivized in different ways to deliver on different objectives in a company. That's fine. But as a researcher, it's important to recognize when those biases exist and to document those assumptions and to bring them up in a kickoff in a really constructive way. Hey, I heard you say that XYZ is really important to our customers, so we should deliver this solution. I want to explore that a little bit more. I wonder if this other thing is also important or more important, or how these other things can affect that, what environmental factors exist. Why don't we integrate that into this research study and consider it? And you might get some pushback, but by being open and honest about what you're looking to explore and how it directly ties to something that the stakeholder cares about, you're including them in the process while preserving the rigor of your work. And then when it comes to actually like executing, to your point, like there's a lot of power in folks observing. We used to have an observation calendar at Rocket. We have one at PayPal too, where anyone can just come in, join a moderated research session, listen in, and also have a debrief afterwards. And I think I'm sure they heard the same things I did. But everyone comes out of an interview or any other sort of moderated research session with different takeaways based on what they're listening for. And I think it's really valuable to have that conversation with stakeholders to understand where their head's at and coming together to align on where are we going to take that data from there. But okay, so there's two other ways I think that we can collaborate with our stakeholders. So the next one is I do think the researcher should own analyzing and synthesizing the raw data into be specialized in. But I do think it's really helpful to then take those themes to your stakeholders and co-create the recommendations together. It's kind of like a research-driven ideation session, so to speak, right? Where you're like, hey, these are the common themes I've found. Let's talk about ways that we can integrate this into the design. I think a lot of times when we miss that step, our recommendations are either too broad for our team to really understand how to apply them into their own work, or they're specific, but not really hitting the mark of where our stakeholders want to take things. And there's a little bit of latitude there. We can stay honest to the research, but implement like different ideas than maybe we as a researcher can think of. And we have to respect the fact that our product managers and our designers may have different ideas about how to bring these insights to life. So I think it's really crucial that they're involved in part of building out those recommendations. And in doing that, you're also ensuring that everyone is aligned on the recommended solution, so that when it does go to a design review or to leadership, or if it's challenged in any way down the line, you have allies. It's not just you saying, hey, this is what the research showed. Hey, we came together. We decided this is the best path forward. We all believe in this. Here's the research to support it. Here is the design justification, right? The design principles we're relying on to inform this. This is how we think it's going to affect the business. It's probably how your product managers are going to support it. So getting the power of all those three perspectives together is going to help you build the best solution.
Yeah, that's an interesting take that I don't think a lot of researchers do, building the recommendations with their team. They usually include that in their summary report, right? So I like that because then you can have some conversations, get more context and knowledge with your stakeholders around oh, I didn't realize that was key to you. Okay, so that's where we need to focus those conversations that we had in those ideation sessions.
At the end of the day, generally, you don't have a one-to-one relationship between research and design or research and PM. There's going to be more designers and more product managers than there are researchers. We tend to operate more horizontally over a broader scope of work. That means their depth of knowledge into specific flows and designs and how they're performing can be greater than the researchers. So it's also really helpful for the researcher to learn a little bit more about that depth and how things apply, because it's impossible when you've got that broader scope of work, go as deep on the design specifically. You're specializing in the user need, you're specializing in the data. And so it's really helpful to have that perspective for sure.
Check out all my interviews with industry leaders on BlatzChatz.